The number of bands reaching for fame and fortune by putting out a record are too numerous to mention individually. But some stood out because they had something different, and one of those bands was the Third Booth from Canton, Illinois. We were told that they got their name from sitting in the third booth in a small diner in Canton and thought that would be a cool name. Just like many of the bands that wanted to hear themselves on record, the Third Booth was young and inexperienced when they set out to make that first recording.
Oh, my now, girl, I want you in my arms for the rest of time now. If I see you running with that guy.
Jerry remembers how that first song caught his attention.
One of the two songs that they recorded that day was called I Need Love. And the sort of drone of the song and the characteristic of it made me believe that by putting an echo, a repeating echo on the vocal and on the lead guitar, it would give a unique characteristic that would fit the song and fit the arrangement. I proceeded to do so, and I felt like it did what was intended, and I believe that it's one of the things that give the record an appeal. I thought that the song was called I Need Love at the time I recorded it because that was kind of a repeating phrase within the material. But they released a song as the title Sound Incorporated, and it was released on the Thunder label. Thunder was one of a number of labels besides Golden Voice that we let bands and artists use freely to have their own records pressed on, and it was a convenience for the bands and the artists at that time.
Like all of the local recordings that came out of Golden Voice, the local radio stations were generous about giving the Third Booth airplay in Peoria and other markets around the area.
There are many mysteries in life to see. Here are the mysteries, what they seem to be. And I found that really just can't be. And I know how I'd like it to be with me.
But Deb Rodney, J.C. Clore, Tim Hackett, Steve Fleming, and Tom Reed wanted more than local airplay, and they took a different route.
One day the band decided they're going to journey to Chicago and see if they can get one of the famous disc jockeys from one of the large radio stations to give it a listen. Well, as it turns out, that's usually a dead-end street because those disc jockeys are very busy. They're dealing mainly with major record companies, not small independents. But they were able to leave the recording in hopes that maybe he would give it a listen to in his spare time. Well, I believe before the band actually got back home to Canton, the disc jockey had put it on the air and had played it more than one time. He felt that the recording had a similar vibe and a similar sound to another record that had done very well nationally, and he got very excited about promoting it. So he is the one that really started putting the energy behind it and giving it a lot of airplay for all of Chicago and all their listeners outside of Chicago to hear. It became a problem for the band because now if record sales were going to be involved, like they would be when you get major airplay, those records have to be pressed and distributed and put into record stores all over the Midwest. And that's an undertaking that a small independent label or a group on their own can't really handle. So the disc jockey that was doing the promotion on the record knew a man or had a friend in California that had a national record label called Independence. He got a hold of the man and he told him what was going on and airmailed him out a copy of the record, and the fellow from Independence liked what he heard and said, yes, I would like to negotiate with the band to switch the record from Thunder over to Independence, and that he would do the distribution and promotion from that point forward.
In addition to promoting I Need Love, Independence Records agreed to consider promoting any follow-up recordings they felt were sellable from future recording sessions.
One of the big problems with releasing a record like this in a major market, if it doesn't go outside of that market and connect with LA and New York and other markets, it's still a local record of sorts, because even though it can sell a number of copies in an area like Chicago, it's not really considered a national release because the other markets aren't playing it. Well, unfortunately, the song never got picked up by other major markets, and that was a bad thing for the band, but it was still a good thing that Chicago was a very good market. They got a lot of exposure there, and it gave the group a chance to try to put together another recording that independents could follow up with and see if it could be bigger than the first.
Both Jerry Milam and the band made real effort to produce something that Independence Records felt they could sell, but it never happened. Even without making the national scene, some members of the band went on to perform for many more years.